Okay.
Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everybody. We have a few friends joining us from different time zones as well. So welcome to all of you. We welcome you to yet another podcast from dlife.in. My name is Anjali, and I'm a certified low carb nutritionist, having completed my diploma in low carb nutrition from DLife. DLife is one among the foremost communities dedicated to reverse diabetes and other metabolic conditions through low carb dietary pattern. They have more than 250 plus recorded success stories so far, and a lot more, and we are still counting. I'm very excited to be a part of this podcast today. Why? Because this is my chance to bring more awareness among people and help them live a medication free, healthy lifestyle. Over the past several weeks, we have covered multiple topics ranging from lab report analysis. We have Arun Kumar in the group today who's helped us interpret a lot of lab related data and a lot of terms that we were not aware of. We've had interviews with several prominent doctors who are also low carb advocates and they're stalwarts in their fields. And we've had interviews with successful people who have been following low carb and have completely gone pill free and have reversed all their other metabolic conditions over a few years. I've been a practicing low carber for the past 3.5 years now. It started out simply as a research for my startup company sometime in 2017. And later on, it became my lifestyle because I personally saw a lot of benefits, including a 20 plus kilo weight loss. And then somewhere in 2018, I made it my mission to help others with their metabolic problems because I could connect with a lot of people suffering very similarly to how I used to. And I wanted to help them with a solution that I know that really works. I discovered D Life sometime in late 2019 and became the first person to graduate from their diploma course in 2020. So, one of the best things I ever did during the lockdown period was to take up a course, get myself certified, and understand more information, get more knowledge around the area that I wanted to start being professional in. I now provide personalized coaching and mentoring to those who are looking to lose weight, who want to manage other metabolic issues, reduce their diabetes medications. And I've actually helped quite a few of them lose weight and bring down their HbA1c numbers to a more acceptable and a near normal levels. And of course, over a period of time, I'm looking forward to all of these people going completely pill free and sustaining their health through low carb food. If you'd like to know more about the diploma and the community that we are a part of that's doing such great work, you could check out the website www.dlife.in. Now, over to today's topic. In the past few years that I have been talking about low carb, reading so much about it, being a part of so many sessions, there have been multiple myths that have surrounded this entire concept of keto, low carb, LCHF, carnivore, all of that. And media has not actually helped. Media has been putting in a lot of points out there. They've been putting in a lot of statements out there. So to an average person, it becomes very difficult to know which is true or which is false. But the myths that I've actually seen, which have been ranging really wide, is keto or low carb a fad diet? Will it fade in a while? That's a myth. Keto promotes a lot of meat eating. A few of my potential clients have come and spoken to me and said, I'm scared of keto because it forces people to eat a lot of meat. A few people, get scared because there's this myth floating around saying it will damage kidneys. And then there's also another myth because of the fats that are said to be consumed that it's going to cause a lot of problems to your heart and you will have heart diseases. So, in today's topic, we thought we will tackle a very important question and we'll dig a little bit more deeper around in low carb. We'll look a bit more into low carb, look a bit into the history, and kind of demystify the statement that says, is low carb or keto a fad? And to talk in detail about this, we have Shashikant Iyengar with us. Many of you know him through various interviews that he's hosted over here. I think for a change, he's sitting on the other side and I'm sitting in his normal seat. Um, He's popularly known as the keto king of our community, extremely well read, very highly passionate about keto and low carb. And, personally, I have been, he's actually been my go to person for a lot of questions that I've had about low carb, a lot of issues, a lot of case studies. And there have been instances where he's just pulled out studies and videos of specific topics right out of the hat, and it helps to a great extent that he himself is pill free for nearly 5 years now and kind of going grain free as well. So I'm sure he'll talk a bit more about his own personal story. So, welcome, Shashi. We are very happy to host you today and very happy to have you in the expert chair.
Yeah, thank
We'll,
you. Yeah, thank you
yes.
very much. Thank you very much, Anjali, for the kind words, and that was a good introduction about V Life also. And see, today basically what we'll be talking is whether this is low carb, whether you call it low carb or LCHF or keto, is it something, is it a fad diet? Because most of the people from mainstream and even dietitians, they will all call it as something as something a fad, something which is more recent. But however, people who call it fad diet are actually essentially, I will say that they are just ignorant because they don't read, they don't update themselves. So it's going to be very, very interesting. And for the last 5 years, I've been collecting, various documents and various screenshots, which will actually help us understand that this is not really a fad diet. It's something which, which was there for more than 200 years. So what I'll do is, Anjali, I'm going to now, share a PowerPoint slide. Okay. So, so this will actually help us understand, a bit more faster. So just a minute. Just have the participant list also. Yeah, because someone or the other keeps unmuting. I don't know. The unmute button is not working as of now. Yeah. So this is a topic. 200 years of low carb history. Yeah. First of all, people know me as low carb enthusiastic on a low carb nutrition for 5 years, and on a type 2 diabetic with a tight band of 4.7 to 5 maximum, and I have more than 4,000 hours of reading as of now. And on an average 2 hours per day minimum is my reading. So is carbohydrate restriction, keto or LCHF or carbohydrate is it a fad diet? What is a fad diet? A fad diet is an intense, widely shared enthusiasm, something which is short-lived and it's a craze. So is it really something which is short-lived? Is it a craze? Let us now find out. So see, we were all hunter-gatherers, like we were all cavemen earlier. So what they used to consume is, it was always low in carb and always high in fat and high in protein, and there were hardly any of the metabolic syndrome, which we see and which is adequately represented in the junk foodie consuming guy, which is seen on the right. So what we'll do is we'll just very quickly run through this PPT from the past to the present. The earliest documented case is 1797. Please note, this is more than 200 years old. Dr. John Rollo, a Surgeon General, he was a Scottish military surgeon, and this is the earliest documented case, note of a diabetic case. So here he has put a few diabetics on a carbohydrate restricted diet, which was basically an all meat diet. This was an all meat diet, and he has successfully reversed diabetes. So this is the earliest documented one which we have, with the low carb nutrition worlds. Anyone can Google and then they can find out various references. The next one goes to 1825. Again, imagine, this is again almost 200 years old. It was a common knowledge that sugar, grains, and beer will make you fat. That time, of course, vegetable oils haven't been invented. And this book is called as The Physiology of Taste, 1825. The same thing is here. This is the same thing, The Physiology of Taste. So French lawyer, brilliant Severin publishes The Physiology of Taste. And this was known during 1825 itself, that everything starchy or anything which is having a lot of flour, which actually cause weight gain. So this presentation will be primarily on both diabetes as well as on obesity, the low carb nutrition on both the cases. Just a minute. So this is again, this is again in 1854, cookbook, cookbook for diabetics by Rebecca Oppenheimer. So this is again basically this book recommends meat, fish, eggs, butter, olive oil, eggs, poultry for managing diabetes, and all starchy foods which are there in the right marked in the red border. They are all sugars, all starchy food, all flour, bread, biscuit, rice. All of them have to be avoided. So this was known. This was known in 1854. Just imagine. And this is an unknown date. I really cannot find out the date for this. But again, this against which recommend that starchy food like flour, sugar, potato should be avoided. Meat, cheese, vegetable, oil, etc. can be taken for diabetic. So there's again one more unknown date, feeding the family recipe for low in starch and sugar. Again for obesity and diabetes, they again recommend something which is very, very low in carbohydrate. Very, very old document. 1862, Frederick Pavey, the leading British diabetologist in researchers on the nature and treatment of diabetes. Again, this is what he recommends. As you can see in this side, what we can is all these meat, fish, eggs, nuts, all kind of non-starchy vegetables. Whereas what they may not eat is all those starchy foods which are there in the extreme right side here. So very nicely they are given may eat, must avoid eating, may eat and must avoid eating. Very nicely they are given. And by far this is well known in the low carb world. William Banting, Letter on Corpulence. So this is very, very famous. He was an English undertaker who was obese almost for his lifetime. And then when he eliminated bread and other starchy food like potato, etc., he was able to lose weight. And of course, he has taken this advice from a physician called Dr. William Harvey, who himself was inspired by Dr. Claude Bernard in a conference. So what Mr. William Banting did was he collected all his data and he made it into a sort of manuscript or a letter or a book called Letter on Corpulence, and he took it to the medical establishment in his town. Unfortunately, they just rejected him and they told him, please don't meddle in the affairs of medical. That's all. It was very curtly, he was just driven away. So coming back, what he did was he published this book, and let me tell you that this book was a hit. So he had to publish it actually twice. So this is well known in low carb circle. It is also known as the Banting diet in South Africa. It's known as Banting diet, which is very, very popular, and this is named after William Banting. 1875 again, Thomas King Chambers, 1895, a manual of diet and health, diet in health and disease. Is again, they have mentioned again what we know, for diabetes. Avoid all starchy foods, take meat, fish, egg, and non-starchy vegetables. 1877, Morgan Williams, Diabetes mellitus, its history, chemistry, pathology, physiology, and treatment. Avoid starchy food for type 2 diabetes management. Very, very, very clearly given. Please note again, it is 1877. This is also undated, but this is all before Atkins. A doctor's quick weight loss diet, medically proven. Again, they recommend low carb diet. And again, Dr. Carlton Fredericks, low carb diet again. And they're all pre-Atkins time. 1882, Dr. Wilhelm Epstein, obesity and its treatment. Fatty foods are crucial because they increase satiety and so decrease fat accumulation. Avoid sugar, sweet, and potatoes. Limit bread and vegetable. Meat of all kind can be taken, especially fat meat. Dr. William Epstein. So this is an excerpt from his book, Obesity and Treatment in 1882. Just imagine, 1882, they knew what the treatment for obesity. 1895, Dr. Lawrence Humphrey, Manual of Nursing, Medical and Surgical. Again, carbohydrates are injurious to those with diabetes and should be avoided. Just imagine, 1895 again, they knew it. And by far another famous is Dr. William Osler, who was called as the father of modern medicine. This is somewhere in 1907 in his textbook, The Principles and Practice of Medicine. Again, he has recommended for the treatment of obesity and for the treatment of diabetes that fatty foods are crucial because they increase satiety and then they decrease the fat accumulation. And he has also recommended the same thing, to avoid starchy food. And I think most of us may not know that this again dates back to 1907. So this is the same thing. Dr. William Osler, somewhere in the same time, this is again an excerpt from his book. So 1913, Carl von Norden, the leading German authority in 1913, in New Aspects of Diabetes, Pathology and Treatment, again he mentions about sugar and carbohydrate in general, that these should be avoided in all those who are diabetics. Again, this is the same thing, the Osler's textbook of medicine. These are certain documents, which were there and which I thought, we can share it here. Now, by far, this is very, very interesting, is from Jocelyn, from Elliot Jocelyn, 1915. So he has formulated this diet for diabetics. Now, please remember that Dr. Jocelyn is very, very famous. Dr. Jocelyn's textbook of diabetes is the Bible for today's endocrinologist. So in those days, before the discovery of insulin and before the discovery of sulfonylurea class of drugs, he has formulated a diet for type 2 diabetics. This was in 1915, and insulin was discovered somewhere around 1924. So what he has mentioned is carbohydrate around 10 grams, protein around 75, fat around 150, and he has even permitted some alcohol. Bhaskar sir will be happy to hear this. He has also recommended around 15 grams of alcohol, which is permitted. So strict diet, food without sugar, meat, poultry, game, fish, clear soups. He has recommended even gelatin, eggs, butter, olive oil, coffee, tea, and cracked cocoa. And this is a very, very low carbohydrate diet. And this is mentioned in the textbook, in the reference, the journal, American Journal of Medical Sciences. And this is what he has recommended before the discovery of insulin and sulfonylurea. 1919, Frederick Allen, in the history of dietary treatment in Rockefeller Institute of Medicine. Again, diet of protein and fats and minimal carbohydrate food. This is again for diabetes, effective management of diabetes. 1920, L.H. Newberg, MD, and Phil H. Marsh, the use of high-fat diet in the treatment of diabetes mellitus. Again, very, very interesting. This is again published. It is published in Journal of American Medical Association. This is again in 1920, Joseph Carvet in Czech's Diabetology. Again, he has developed a whole food carbohydrate restricted diet for diabetes. This is again in 1920. Please note that. 1921, now comes the very, very, very interesting part. Dr. Russell Moore Wilder, ketogenic diet. So he's well known for developing the ketogenic diet for epilepsy, and it is being followed even today. So this is the famous Dr. Russell Moore. But something which was not known about Dr. Russell Moore is something which we just know now, and it is being widely discussed in the low carb world, that Dr. Russell Moore has also developed the same type of ketogenic diet for diabetics, a primer for diabetic patients. This is the book which he has come out in association with a couple of dietitians from the Mayo Clinic. So what he has done is, he has recommended 4 different carbohydrate levels, which is very, very interesting. So, he had developed different levels depending upon the carb tolerance. There are those patients where he recommend carbohydrate below 40 gram. There are those patients where he can recommend 40 to 60. For some, 60 to 100. And for some, maybe 100, above 100, maybe 100, 120 or 150. All depending upon the extent of metabolic damage or the extent of carbohydrate tolerance with which a person has. So this is very, very interesting. And, we have this dietitian, registered dietitian from Canada, Dr. Joy Kiddy, writing extensively about this. And, probably in our future podcast, I already invited her, and we are going to discuss, something about this, as well as most of our articles. So if anyone visits our website, you'll be able to see, a lot of brilliant write-up which Dr. Joy has given, or Joy Kiddy has given. Yeah. 1925, every woman doctor book advocates a low carb for treating type 2 diabetes. So it's very, very interesting. Again, they recommend avoiding all starchy foods. 1951, Raymond Green, The Practice of Endocrinology. Please note the date 1951. Again, he gives the same thing. Avoid bread, cereals, potatoes, and all sweets and all sugar, meat, fish, birds, all green vegetable, egg, cheese, fruits except banana. So he has recommended even maybe fruits for depending upon the tolerance. because banana and grapes are high sugar. Maybe low sugar fruits is okay as per him. Pennington AW. Just a minute. So someone is. Yeah. So Pennington AW, the use of fat in weight reducing diet. So again, a calorically unrestricted diet of fat and protein with good restriction on carbohydrate. So this is again 1951. Dr. Green L. Thorpe, which is again published in JAMA, treating overweight patient with meat, fat, and water. So this is, probably we know as what is called as the carnivore diet in today's context. There are many people who do carnivore diet. Famous is Dr. Sean Baker, who advocates. So they again recommend this treatment for overweight patients. So, Two Solid Flesh, 1958, from British Journal, British Medical Journal. Again, there's again the article which recommends high-fat diet for weight loss, carbohydrate restricted high-fat diet. So, there's the same thing. There's the same which is mentioned here. The effect of high-fat and high carbohydrate diet, where they are compared, and they have found that those on high-fat diet were able to reduce weight rapidly compared to those on high carbohydrate diet. Dr. Richard Markness, somewhere in 1958, wrote a book called "Eat Fat and Go Slim" and Grow Slim. This was widely popular. Again, is the same thing. Avoid starchy carbohydrates. Eat more fat and protein. 1960, Drinking Man's Diet. Again, this is again the same thing. Eating all meat, fish, eggs, and avoiding all starchy vegetables. 1960, the Air Force diet, which was known as the low carbohydrate diet again. 1960, this was G.D. Campbell, somewhere in South Africa. So this was, South African Medical Journal, diabetes in Asian and Africans in and around Durban. So he has recommended the same thing. Please avoid sugar, sweet potato, cakes, and then eat lot of, non-starchy vegetables, meat, fish, eggs. And he has recommended some, small amount of broad beans and all. This was basically a carbohydrate restricted diet. 1961, Blake Donaldson, MD, in his book Strong Medicine, again recommends a fatty meat diet, carbohydrate restricted fatty meat diet for all his patients. The Stone Age diet, the Strong Medicine, again, they all recommended the carbohydrate restricted diet. This is something which we had discussed in the earlier podcast with Dr. Antti Heikkilä, where he has mentioned Dr. Wolfgang Lutz from German, recommended eliminating bread and starchy food. And his book, Life Without Bread, describes how a low carbohydrate, high protein diet can prevent cancer, diabetes, heart disease, obesity, as well as increased strength, endurance, and muscle mass. 1975, coming closer now, T.L. Cleve, the saccharine disease. Again, he also recommends the same thing. Consuming the ever-increasing refined carbohydrate, humans are not adapted to the use of this artificially concentrated food. Again, he recommends a low carbohydrate diet for diabetes. And again, in this single slide, the origin of carbohydrate restriction, as you can see, there are so many other references in a single slide, dating from 1811 to 1942, most of which we are seeing now. Atkins is by far very well popular, known as the Atkins diet, somewhere in the 70s. And he was very famous for low carbohydrate diet. And people can go to YouTube and actually see treatment of choice in obesity, the evidence behind using low carbohydrate diet. And this was a lecture in the USDA, the Great Nutrition Debate, somewhere in 2000. So this is just, I have inserted a slide which shows that, carbohydrate is not an essential nutrient. We actually don't require carbohydrate at all. And whatever little glucose we need, it is produced by our liver by a process called gluconeogenesis. So the lowest limit for dietary carbohydrate is 0. This is again a checks online references which people can go and see. There are 248 published references on the low carb on various diseases. Healthline, there are 23 studies on low carb versus low fat. And let me tell you that low carb trumps low fat diet hands down. And by far the guru for all diabetics, especially type 1 diabetes, is Dr. Richard Bernstein, who is aged now more than 70. And he's been a type 1 diabetic for so many years. And he has written a book called Diabetes Solution, where he has recommended a very low carb and higher protein diet. and is still practicing in his 70s and still doing well. And now coming closer, this is the mainstream recommendation. Obesity Medicine Association, United States, in the 2019 and 2020, as you can see, they are very clearly mentioned in this blue circle. Very low carbohydrate diet, more than 50 grams, with or without nutritional ketosis. This is an option for diabetes, which for obesity. So this is what they are given: low calorie diet or restricted carbohydrate diet. They have also specifically mentioned ketogenic diet, keto or Atkins diet for obesity. Diabetes Australia, again, they have also in their position statement, they have also recommended a low carbohydrate diet. Now, this is the, by far, accepted world over, that is American Diabetes Association. In 2019, they have included low carbohydrate diet and very low carbohydrate diet for diabetes. So this is an option in their MNT, Medical Nutrition Therapy. So this is there in 2019, it is there in 2020, and it will also come in 2021 as and when the release. So 2020, Diabetes Canada also recommends low CHO or very low CHO for type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So they have given this option, it is there. It is just that we do not know. So in an online, portal called Guidelines Central, where there are various guidelines for various diseases, they have also recommended a low carb nutrition approach where they are given the guideline. So this is me, of course, losing 10 kilos and usually with an HbA1c of 4.7 to 5. So people can follow me in Twitter and in Instagram, of course. Yeah, Anjali. So I think you want to say something, or shall we open for question and answer session?
Um, I think if we're done, we could open up for question and answers. There are a couple of questions already, but before going in, just had one question to ask
Yeah.
of you. Now, this is a very deep history, wherein I would say it's a recorded history, because if we, as a lot of us low carbers know, that we are also emulating what our forefathers ate 3 to 4,000 to 5,000 years ago, before the advent of agriculture and before the advent of grains, right? So, considering a lot of this Western concept, now when we have to look at it from an Indian perspective, there's a lot of meat, there's a lot of stress on meat. So, one thing that I think that scared one of my people whom I was talking to earlier also was the emphasis on meat. So, does it force people to eat meat? Is there a lot of
See,
meat into it?
yeah, see, we always have what is called as the Indian jugaad. We all know that. Whatever foreign concept, we will usually adopt it to see that, we can how we convert it into Indian jugaad. So basically, what it says is to have lot of protein and fats, or let me say a lot of fats and protein. So we just have to adopt that. And for vegetarians, of course, for protein fat, we have paneer, and then we have hung curd, we have cheese, and then we have nuts. So, and in some cases, we can even opt for, let us say, whey protein. Just mix a little cream in whey protein and have it, or maybe mix a little coconut oil and whey protein and have it. So, we always, manage to have an Indian jugaad and, convert it. And anyway, we are used to eating a lot of non-starchy vegetables. So we just need to strike off that potato and wheat and adopt that non-starchy vegetable. So we have a lot of options, and there are a lot of vegetarians who don't mind taking eggs. So it is very easy for them. They can have as many eggs as they want, absolutely no issue. And the other thing which is not very offensive is, maybe they can have, they can have something like collagen and all. Collagen provides protein. They can have that also. But otherwise, for all non-vegetarians, it is very easy. The world is open. They can have a lot of meat, fish, eggs, absolutely no issue. A lot of non-starchy vegetables. And then we have seen a lot of success stories. In our forum, we have seen that whether it is vegetarian or non-vegetarian, all of us successfully, overcome diabetes or obesity or even hypertension. People have been able to get off medicines even for hypertension. So we can always adjust it to our way. Absolutely, there is no issue. Yeah, being a non-vegetarian, it is very easy. Being a vegetarian, it will be a challenge, but it is possible. And we have seen a lot of success stories.
Excellent. I think we can unmute it, but there's also one question where we have Krishna
Yeah.
Venkataraman, who's asking us if there is a reason why we have given away fat. If that was what our backbone is supposed to be, why is it taken a back seat?
See, there are two things. First of all, somewhere around when insulin was discovered, and then people felt that they can eat anything they want, and so they broke away from this dietary pattern. One. Secondly, the history of vilifying or demonizing fat is also there. We have the famous Ansel Keys, who has demonized fats by telling that saturated fatty acids or excess fat will raise cholesterol and raise heart disease, which is a totally wrong paradigm. And because of this, people have generally avoided fats, and protein is another thing, different thing. People have been saying that high protein will damage kidney and all. So all totally wrong, and I will say this is all utter nonsense. Because personally, I am on almost 2.2 gram per kg body weight, and I am not a bodybuilder. I don't go to gym. So just routine home exercises I may not do. So absolutely fat and protein, you just cannot overeat them. Don't worry. Unless you take in some 10 scoops of whey protein, which no one will do. No one can take excess protein. And I challenge anyone who can eat 500 grams of paneer, to consume even 200 grams is a big challenge. So we cannot over consume all this. That's a very strong satiety signal. Yeah.
Okay. I think
Thanks,
we
Shashi. Krishna here.
Yeah, Krishna. Yeah, Krishna, you can say.
No, I was just saying thank you
Yeah.
for the question answer.
Yeah. Yeah, Bhaskar, you want to say something? Unmute, please unmute. Yes, sir. Please unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I just wanted to tell you, thank you for that alcohol-free stuff, 15 grams, even William Panting allowed. So that is definitely not an issue henceforth. Anjali, did you note that?
I did. But again, there's also a point which says everything is individual. Everything has to be individually customized.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, thank you so much. That was nice. So, Shashi, that was a nice presentation of the history.
Yeah. Sneha, madam, is there something specific in carbs that, that you get addicted to them? See, Sneha, madam, what happens is, it is not that carbohydrate in general are addictive. It is the modern processed food which are highly addictive, and that particularly refined oil which we take, which can independently cause insulin resistance, and it can also cause addiction to some extent. So this leads to some sort of addiction. Otherwise, there is not much of an issue.
I'd just like to add one
Yeah.
point here. While generically, when you say carbs, maybe you're referring to grains, may not be that addictive, but I would say sugar is definitely addictive. I'm talking primarily from a lot of personal experience. I'm sure many of us in the forum would have experienced it. Sugar is highly addictive. And there have been studies also that keep pointing out that sugar, because it gives you a feel good factor, it makes you pretty addictive, and it causes you to eat more and more. And that becomes a challenge where it kind of becomes almost equivalent to any other drug out there in the market. So yes, sugar is highly addictive. It is best to stay away from it. And if you're on a high carb diet, it's very difficult to avoid sugar. But once you switch to a low carb, it's very easy to give up sugar, and you can just give it up this way.
Anjali,
Yeah.
I want to add something
Sure.
that grains are also addictive. If you take, see, yesterday I met a man in the park where I was going for a walk irregularly. The man has just recently diagnosed as diabetic. And when I told him about the diet, that you reduce your carb, you just forget every grain, the first question he gave me, then मैं खाऊंगा क्या? That was the first question. Then I elaborated everything. But grains are also addictive because that contains a high amount of the carbohydrate. And in my view, if you see the chemically, there is hardly any difference between sugar and carbohydrate, except the C6H12O6, instead of C6H12 and O5. There is hardly any difference. So addiction is both sides. Only thing in sugar, your sweet taste bud is in the front side of your tongue. So you first taste the sweetness, then comes to the latter on the bitterness or sourness, whatever it is. So that's why the sweet things are having the addiction more. But grains are equally addictive. If you see that people, if you ask that don't take rice, don't take wheat, the first question you will say, they will ask you, what I will then eat? There is a lot of
You.
things. Okay, Anjali.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that question, let me also say that if you read books from Dr. William Davis, Wheat Belly, he also mentioned that wheat can be addictive because the modern wheat, the modern DOF wheat, can be addictive on its own capacity as compared to the older wheat. So there's a possibility that they all affect to a good extent. And there's one more. There's a question from Chetan Chabria. When you say avoid grain, what is the alternative to eating rice and wheat, or they can be taken in moderation? We just need to avoid them. We don't see the moment you keep an alternative, then it's difficult. So there should be no alternative. They can be taken in moderation, yes, depending upon the metabolic damage. If someone is having, let us say, pre-diabetes or very early stages, maybe they can have small amount of grains once a day. I don't mind. But someone is in the advanced stage, and depending upon individual carb tolerance, we need to avoid. Like personally, I cannot tolerate even one chapati or some rice. The blood sugar really spikes. So I tend to totally avoid that. Yeah, I want to add something, Anjali.
Yes, yes. So when we're talking about moderation, moderation is a very, very personalized word. Meaning, for instance, Shashi, for you, moderation may be like, let's say, half a chapati. For another person, a moderate consumption of chapati may be 2 chapatis. So moderation is very, very subjective. Now, again, like Shashi says, it's very important to know the extent of our internal damage, the extent of our health, and then we can consume it. Overall, I would say it all goes back to our mindset. It's just that we are so used to eating rice and wheat, and we've made that as a big part. You can pick up any South Indian plate, any North Indian plate, and you will see that 80% of it is filled only with carbohydrate, which is coming only from rice and chapati. The vegetables become a very small subset, a very minor subset of it in a small katori, and then you will have maybe a little bit of curd. So basically, our regular nutrient consumption is very, very protein deficient. It's completely based on carbs, which is what is causing all our problems. So it's more from a mindset perspective as well. You can get onto LC, low carb pattern. You can consistently reduce the amount of food, the amount of rice that you consume, reduce the amount of chapatis that you consume, and increase the other foods that are allowed in low carb. And then I think you will personally be able to do that experiment and find out how much is in moderation. Right.
Yeah, so Bhaskar sir has mentioned how do we consume more than 100 gram fat. See, we don't have to target fat. Okay, you just target your protein food. Fat comes attached to it, and you may use a small amount for cooking. Automatically, you'll reach that. So you don't have to really jump to that 100 gram fat. You don't have to jump to that bulletproof coffees and all. So you just target the right optimal food, and it comes. Yeah, Sneha madam has mentioned, do you know if we can still source the original non-GMO grains like Bajri? Very, very interesting question. Bajra or millet. Okay, we just had a case in D Life, Anup Singh's friend, where the blood sugar was above 350, which is now hovering around 110 or so. So this person was taking the millets, the Bajra or Nachni. Once he left that, automatically everything fell into place, and he was taking sulfonylurea and metformin. Currently, he's only on metformin, and he has given up sulfonylurea class of drugs. So you can imagine, so whether it is GMO, non-GMO, whether it is millets, whether it is grains, it makes no difference because all of them are all starchy. And depending upon our carb tolerance, if we are extremely damaged, then this is not going to work. So we just need to quit. We just need to quit grains and millets. So there is no option.
If I could just add into this,
Yeah.
over here. So when we're talking about, I think it's an extension to another question that Sneha also had mentioned earlier, saying people find it difficult to live without rice. I mean, rice and bread or roti. Yes, I completely empathize with you because I was like that 4 years ago when somebody mentioned the term LCHF and they said you have to give up grains. I was shocked to the core because like how can you even consider food without roti or rice? But fast track it to this stage today, I prefer to very badly avoid rice and grains. It's more of a practice. That is number one. The number two part is if you're diabetic, the easiest explanation of a diabetic or a pre-diabetic is you are allergic to carbs. Now, if I have to put this explanation saying you are allergic to carbs and compare it to a statement or compare it to a state of somebody who's allergic to nuts or soy, let's say somebody who's allergic to nuts, and you feed them even one peanut, what would happen? Right? So the extent of allergy could range from mild to them running to the emergency room. So it's the same case over here. When you're talking about a diabetic, when you're talking about a metabolic disorder, which primarily is insulin resistance, it basically means you're allergic to carbs. So the tolerance level is what you're talking about. Tolerance level for some people, they may not be reacting much, but for some people, the spikes would be really high. So it's best, just like how a peanut allergy person avoids peanuts and other nuts, it's best to avoid carbs as much as possible. Stay on fresh, unprocessed foods and you will stay healthy. I hope
This is
that answers the question.
Did we see any impact on mental health in the last 15 months? Except with people in this diet?
Especially,
exactly,
I'm sorry.
Especially, yeah. We did have one case in D-Life where a person was on multiple medication. He was on anxiety, psychosis, and depression, various kind of mental illnesses, having some 5-6 medication. Now I think he's off everything except maybe just one medication. So this is very well documented, and there are a lot of studies coming up currently on the state of insulin resistance and mental health. And so there could be a good component of insulin resistance as well as some nutrition deficiency like deficiency of B12. So world over, there are some psychiatrists who are actually practicing low carb. Dr. Georgie Eid, Dr. Chris Palmer. So maybe in future, if we manage to get them in one of the podcasts for D-Life, maybe we'll get them and they can discuss how they are using the nutritional approach to heal mental illnesses. So it is distinctly possible, yes, there's a strong connection of insulin resistance and mental illnesses.
Yeah, so that's just probably thinking just on that line, because when, say, probably people with the high, people who take high carbs, so they have, variety of things. But when we talk about LCHF, I mean, from that perspective, I'm trying to come in here.
So any more questions we have?
Yeah, this is Ranjesh. I have a technical question. Like, Sashi, you would have read so much of studies and all that. So I think there are a lot of studies for low-fat diets as well, both for weight loss as well as for controlling diabetes. From the numerous studies that you have seen, how do you kind of summarize the impact or effect of low carb versus low fat, both for body weight as well as diabetes?
See, just now, in the presentation, I had shared one slide of, a screenshot from Healthline where they have compared low fat and low carb, and very clearly, almost all of the studies, they are in favor of low carb compared to low fat. Now, recently also, there has been a study which was again published, which again, shows that, both are similar. But however, the impact on blood sugar, the impact on diabetes has been very far stronger with low carb. So see, I can say that, people can adopt anything they want, whichever they want, whether low fat or low carb. But however, in our forum, we have seen the success with low carb. So studies may come and go, but if you see the documentary evidences from so long, for last 200 years, low carb has trumped everything. So see, modern studies can be adjusted and done any way we want. If we have the end in mind, we can manipulate any study or we can design the study in such a way that low fat or low carb can win either way. So I'm not biased, but if you see the historical documents, low carb is winning, and in our own forums, in our own circle, we see that low carb is by far highly successful. So I think my take is always for low carb. Always.
Yeah, from what I've seen, I'm not seen as many studies as you. In terms of weight loss, low fat can be a bit effective. But in terms of diabetes, I've not seen any study. I mean, I've not seen because I've not, maybe that's because I could have missed. But I haven't seen any studies where low fat has been effective with diabetes. But with weight loss, it has been, is what I've seen in a few cases.
It's possible, Ranjesh, because ultimately I will take carb and fat are energy sources. Okay. So ultimately excess energy we take are going to get converted into the storage form we have, which is the biggest storage form we have is fat. So ultimately reducing energy, it is going to impact, it will reduce to some extent. But if you really want a good weight loss and if you want to preserve lean body mass, then it has to be fat and protein adequately. It is easy to lose weight. When I say lose weight, what? Do you want to lose fat or do you want to lose LBM, lean body mass? When we have adequate fat and protein, and believe me, you will be able to lose weight and preserve that lean body mass. But if you go to the other way, there's a possibility that you must be losing lean body mass. There's a possibility. So whichever way we can adopt, I have no issue as long as we reach our goals.
No,
Thanks,
so
Shashi.
I think he want to tell that it is a low calorie diet.
Yeah.
That is having the low fat diet and the restricted carb and protein. So that is a low calorie diet. I think 800 to 1000 calorie diet. That is not sustainable in the long term. Long term, people will not continue with that diet. Okay, so I think he is talking about that. That is not possible for long term. And second thing, carbohydrate is the culprit which will enhance the weight gain and obesity, not the fat. Fat is not the culprit for making you obese or overweight. So this is very clear. Fat is going to the inside the body, just processed by the liver and converted into triglyceride. If triglyceride is more than it is in the blood serum, then it is deposited in the muscles and tissues. So that is the way it is going on. But fat is not that. Particularly if you are taking the MCT, the medium chain triglyceride, it is directly processed. So that's why I think carbohydrate is not culprit while making you weight or having obesity or weight gain. It is the carbohydrate which makes you the fat and obese. Okay, Mr. Ranjesh.
So
Yeah,
Paparao has a question. What are the main supplements you recommend to take when we are in low carb diet? Is it really necessary to take supplement on daily basis, especially people who are doing fasting for more than 16 hours? See, technically, we don't require any supplements. Don't worry. And when you're on a fasting, again, you don't require any supplement. Just ensure that you take adequate salt. So that's what we need to take: adequate salt, adequate hydration. Maybe a lot of lemon water or that's all. So we don't require any supplements. Don't worry. Go ahead and yeah, we do recommend certain supplements in short-term basis, and if it is not nutritionally adequate, like personally, if there are any vegetarians, then I might recommend to take some fish oil. That is if they don't mind, but otherwise it is okay. So technically, we don't require any supplements. I do agree. Acha, yeah, madam. Yeah, thanks very much. So that's what. And maybe Papara, the one supplement which I very strongly recommend to all, is to take magnesium tablet because traditionally we used to get a lot of magnesium from the soil, which is not there in present. So if at all there is one supplement which I recommend across the spectrum, whichever diet you are in. So maybe we can take magnesium. Yeah.
There was one question on proteins. Raj had asked, proteins are important. What are the options for vegetarians? Well, for this, vegetarians actually do have proteins. You get proteins from dairy products. Dairy becomes a very significant source of your proteins. So you have dairy, you have cheese, you have paneer, Then you have your nuts, which give you reasonable amount nuts and seeds. And of course, you can supplement that with whey protein in case you are deficient.
If cheese and paneer they will take, and as well as the hung curd, is sufficient for meet you the,
Absolutely.
and balancing can adjust with the whey protein.
Absolutely. Yes.
No problem. I am doing that. She know that I am doing that.
Yes. Yes.
Almost
I've
about
seen.
yeah. So
Yeah,
see,
yeah.
I'm telling that my experience. I am
Ah.
usually taking 200 grams of hung curd
Yeah.
and 200 grams of cottage cheese. I mean paneer. So
Adequate.
that is enough, and then balance I just cover up with the whey protein
Yeah. That's
twice a day.
adequate.
So that is sufficient. I think I'm taking almost 65 to 70 gram of protein per day.
Adequate.
Absolutely.
So there's a question here. A comment here, Praveen Kumar. I've seen most low carb folks losing hair or bald. Is there any relation? So there are two things. One is many people go do low carb without proper guidance. One. So they may be more eating more of salad or more of vegetable, not adequate protein. So that is one thing. So if there are less protein or maybe less zinc or biotin, that can happen. So we need to have a nutritionally wide spectrum of food, and maybe supplement with biotin for some time, maybe zinc. And for some people, what happens is it does fall in initial stage, and then it comes back. So absolutely, but some people may have it, but then my experience is it is very rare. Some people do experience in the initial phase, but then the hair grows back. So what is your experience, Anjali?
Initially, yes. In my experience, that was also the same thing. Initially, yes, there was a hair loss primarily because you have a lot of carb-based cells holding onto your hair. So when you're cutting down on carb, it kind of goes off, but then it grows back again, and then there has been, no issue per se. But then, irrespective of a low carb or a high carb diet, typically a lot of people do face hair loss issues. So it need not, in some cases, it need not really relate to the diet at all. There could be some other inherent problem that they may have to get checked up for.
Yeah, thanks, Sanjesh, for finding this good. Mr. Nolesh Mistry, I also started morning breakfast with protein 3 eggs, lunch 2 chapati sabji, bit of rice, filling salad. It is, I will not say it is low carb because you are taking still 2 chapati and a bit of rice at night, and with salad and milk. It may be, see, I will still say that, yeah, it could be a lower carb, but it may not be. But then that depends upon what your goal is. If it is diabetes and if your blood sugar is adequate with this, it's no issue. And if you're losing weight with this, there is no issue at all. So I will say that reducing carbohydrate, there's a spectrum anywhere between, from 10 gram to upwards, maybe, and even 100, 120 gram, there is no issue. So if this is working with you, it is okay. I will not say it is lower carb, Mr. Mistry. It is more of, it is more of lower carb. So, maybe you can just try and see if it works. There is no major disturbance with this. Just see if it works. And there's a possibility that it can work for many. And if you're not reaching a goal, then you have to become more stricter. You have to curtail it even more.
Okay, if your goal, Mr. Nolesh Mistry, if your goal is losing belly fat, then the most ideal way is, like a lot of us have experienced over here, is to cut down on carbohydrate consumption, especially grain consumption. Once you start cutting down on that, get in a bit of physical activities going in for you, add in a bit of fasting, and I think you'll be able to get your goals.
Anjali, I want to add one more thing, that he has to also cut the processed vegetable oil. That is the also reason for the belly fat. So better use butter or ghee or
Absolutely,
CCO.
yes, very true, very true. Talking about processed foods, I just wanted to also go back to someone's question over here on low fat, right? Just wanted to add a point over there. Now, the industry terminology of low fat, actually, if you check any of the products where they have taken out the natural fat, you will see that they have added in a lot of other ingredients to it. Like, for example, take out any curd, processed curd dabba, and check if it says low fat, check what all is added to it, the flavored fat. So you'll see there's a huge amount of additives, a huge amount of sugar that is added to make it more palatable. So fats are technically really, really good simply because they are a natural form of food for us, especially when it comes in a natural. So you have full fat dairy, you have full fat milk, you have full fat curd, you have full fat cheese, no problem, no harm. You have full fat fish or steak or anything, no problem, no harm. The issue starts when you artificially start removing the fats and you start injecting in additives to make the taste most palatable in order to make more sales. So it's best to avoid any product that says low fat, because natural fats are very, very essential for our body to function healthy on a day-to-day basis.
I think there are no more questions. Thank you very much for explaining. Yeah, welcome, Papa Ram. Fine. So Anjali, shall we'll end this?
Yes, I think we can bring an end to it. Just wanted to close it by saying that when you get a chance, you could visit dlife.in to check out the community out there, get more help, get more information, become more aware, and connect with a lot more people who are on the same journey as you are. So.
And thanks Anjali, and it's a big opportunity again for me, and I thank DLife for inviting me to share this some of the historical documents, and I'm sure that we'll be convinced that this is not a fad diet. So anytime anyone says it's a fad diet, please tell them that we are on this right from 1797. Let them go to Google and let them update themselves. Yeah, thank you very much Anjali, thank you DLife.
Thank you so much, Sashi. Thank you, everybody, for joining in and making this an excellent session for all of you. Thank you. Have a wonderful day ahead.